Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And today we're really going deep.
Hmm.
We're exploring the ripple effects of the war in Ukraine, and we're doing it with
Love it.
excerpts from this article that I found really fascinating.
Yeah.
It asks this really big question: will this be Europe's last war, or
Wow.
just the first of many?
Yeah.
And the scenarios that this article lays out are, I mean, they're thought-provoking, to say the least.
I think it really highlights the scale of this conflict.
Yeah.
We're not just talking about territorial disputes here.
Right.
This is a battle over fundamental principles that kind of underpin the global order.
Yeah.
Things like freedom, sovereignty, self-determination.
Yeah.
The outcome of this is going to have significant and long-lasting implications,
Right.
shaping the future of Europe and international relations as a whole.
So this isn't just about what happens within Ukraine's borders, then.
Right.
We're talking about a potential domino effect on the world stage.
All right. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
If Russia achieves its objectives in this conflict, even if it's through some kind of ceasefire that heavily favors them,
Right.
it sends a very clear message.
Yeah.
Aggression can be rewarded,
Mm-hmm.
international norms, they can be violated with impunity.
Yeah.
And this could embolden other countries with expansionist ambitions,
Yeah.
potentially destabilizing entire regions.
It's like giving a green light to any nation that has a grudge and a powerful military.
Exactly. And history has shown us time and again that appeasement,
Right.
it rarely leads to lasting peace.
Yeah.
Take the events leading up to World War II, for example.
Okay.
The world's failure to effectively confront Nazi Germany's early acts of aggression, well, it only emboldened Hitler,
Right.
ultimately paving the way for a global conflict.
So you're saying that there are parallels between that historical situation
Mhm.
and what we're seeing now.
There are certainly echoes, yeah.
Okay.
Of course, each historical situation is unique,
Right.
but the core principle remains the same.
Yeah.
Unaddressed aggression
Mm-hmm.
often leads to more aggression.
Right.
If the international community fails to hold Russia accountable for its actions in Ukraine,
Uh-huh.
it risks setting a dangerous precedent
Okay.
that could encourage future conflicts.
And these future conflicts, where could we see those happening?
Well, the article points to several potential hotspots.
Okay.
Obviously, countries bordering Russia,
Right.
those with historical ties to the former Soviet Union,
Sure.
they're at particular risk.
Okay.
Think of the Baltic states,
Mhm.
for example, or even countries in Central Asia.
Yeah.
But the ripple effects,
Right.
they could extend far beyond that, potentially reigniting tensions in places like the Balkans,
Oh, wow.
or even influencing power dynamics in the Middle East.
Wow, it really puts things into perspective.
Yeah.
It suddenly feels like the peace and stability that Europe has enjoyed for decades is
Right.
much more fragile than we thought.
It certainly highlights the need for a strong and unified response
Mm.
from the international community.
Mm-hmm.
And in many ways, that's what we've seen so far, right?
Yeah.
The West has largely rallied behind Ukraine, providing military aid, imposing sanctions on Russia, offering diplomatic support.
Right.
This unified front has been crucial in helping Ukraine resist the invasion and sending a clear message that aggression will not be tolerated.
So this international unity, this alliance that is supporting Ukraine,
Yeah,
it's critical right now, but the article also suggests it's fragile.
it is.
What factors could weaken this alliance over time?
There are a number of factors that could put a strain on this international coalition.
Okay.
For one, there are internal political pressures within each participating country.
Right.
Leaders face pressure to prioritize domestic issues over foreign policy concerns,
Sure.
especially as the economic costs of supporting Ukraine continue to mount. And additionally, as the war drags on, there's the risk of what's often called war fatigue.
Right.
The public's attention can wane,
Yeah.
and that initial surge of support for Ukraine,
Right.
it could diminish.
Yeah.
This is particularly concerning because it becomes increasingly difficult
Sure.
to maintain the political will
Uh-huh.
for continued sanctions and aid.
So you're saying that even if this initial wave of support holds,
Right.
there are longer-term challenges to
Totally.
maintaining that unity.
Precisely. And then there's the issue of potential divisions within the alliance itself.
Okay.
Different countries have different priorities
Right.
and different risk tolerances.
Sure.
Some might be more willing to push for a negotiated settlement with Russia,
Mm-hmm.
even if it involves concessions from Ukraine,
Right.
while others might be more inclined to maintain a hard line.
Yeah.
These differing viewpoints could lead to cracks in the alliance, potentially undermining its effectiveness.
That's a lot to consider.
It is.
It makes the idea of a ceasefire, which might seem like a positive step
Yeah.
toward peace, a lot more complicated.
Absolutely. A ceasefire is often seen as a desirable outcome in any conflict,
Right.
and it can certainly provide a much-needed respite from the violence.
Sure.
However, the article cautions against viewing a ceasefire as an end in itself.
Okay.
If it's not carefully negotiated and implemented,
Right.
a ceasefire could simply freeze the conflict in place,
Mm-hmm.
giving Russia time to regroup, rearm,
Yeah.
and potentially launch a renewed offensive later on.
So a ceasefire could actually backfire,
Mm-hmm.
leading to an even more dangerous situation down the line.
It's certainly a possibility. Yeah.
Okay.
A ceasefire that merely pauses the fighting without addressing the underlying causes of the conflict.
Right.
It could create a false sense of security
Mm-hmm.
and make it even harder to achieve a lasting peace.
Yeah.
It's like putting a Band-Aid on a deep wound.
Right.
It might cover it up temporarily,
Sure.
but it doesn't actually heal the injury.
What would a real resolution look like in this case?
Well,
What needs to happen to ensure that any ceasefire is more than just a temporary pause?
a truly effective ceasefire would
Mhm.
need to be part of a broader political settlement
Mm-hmm.
that addresses the root causes of the conflict.
Okay.
This would likely involve difficult negotiations,
Sure.
compromise from all sides,
Yeah.
and a commitment to upholding international law
Right.
and respecting Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity.
That sounds like a tall order, especially given the current level of mistrust and animosity
Mhm.
between the parties involved.
It's undoubtedly a complex and challenging situation,
Yeah.
but it's important to remember that the stakes are incredibly high.
Right.
Failure to achieve a lasting peace in Ukraine could have dire consequences,
Yeah.
not just for the region, but for the entire international system.
It feels like this whole situation is a wake-up call, a reminder that the post-Cold War era
Yeah.
of relative peace and stability might be over.
Right.
We're entering a new phase of global geopolitics,
Mm-hmm.
one that's much more volatile and unpredictable.
I think that's a fair assessment, yeah.
Yeah.
The world is becoming increasingly multipolar, with power shifting away from traditional Western institutions.
Okay.
This creates a more complex and fluid geopolitical landscape,
Right.
where conflicts are more likely to erupt
Yeah.
and where the rules of the game are less clear.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the potential dangers, the risk of escalation,
Mm-hmm.
the fragility of international unity.
Right.
But the article also mentions a more optimistic possibility
It does.
that Ukraine's fight could actually inspire a new wave
Mhm.
of pro-democracy movements around the world.
That's right.
Tell me more about that.
The article argues that Ukraine's fierce resistance against Russian aggression,
Uh-huh.
its unwavering commitment to democracy and freedom,
Right.
could serve as a powerful inspiration to others facing similar challenges.
So you're saying this could have a ripple effect, not of conflict and instability,
Mhm.
but of democratic resurgence.
It's certainly a possibility.
Okay.
We've already seen expressions of solidarity with Ukraine from pro-democracy activists and movements around the world.
Yeah.
People in places like Belarus, Hong Kong,
Mhm.
and even Russia itself have drawn inspiration from Ukraine's fight,
Right.
seeing it as a beacon of hope in their own struggles against authoritarianism.
So Ukraine's stand could act as a catalyst, potentially tipping the scales in favor of democracy in other parts of the world?
It's a possibility,
Okay.
though it's important to avoid overly simplistic narratives.
Right.
The situation in each country is unique, and there are no guarantees.
Sure.
But the point is that the war in Ukraine is not just a regional conflict.
Mm-hmm.
It has global implications
Right.
and resonates with broader struggles for freedom and self-determination.
It's a powerful reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope and resilience can prevail. It's like this Ukrainian fight has touched a nerve,
Yeah.
sparked something in people around the world who yearn for a more just and equitable world.
Absolutely. And this brings us back to the importance of individual action.
Right.
We've talked about the role of the governments and international institutions,
Yeah.
but ultimately change happens from the ground up. Each of us has a role to play in shaping the future.
Speaking of action, the article highlights a specific initiative called Ukraine Boost
Yes.
as a way for individuals to make a difference. Can you tell us more about that?
Certainly, Ukraine Boost is an initiative that aims to directly support Ukraine's economy,
Okay.
and by extension, its resistance efforts.
Right.
It's a platform that connects consumers with Ukrainian businesses,
Uh-huh.
allowing people to purchase a wide range of goods and services.
So instead of just donating money, people can actually buy products from Ukrainian businesses.
Exactly.
What kind of things we're talking about?
It's a diverse range of products and services,
Okay.
from handmade crafts and artwork
Mm-hmm.
to clothing, software, and even digital marketing services.
Wow.
You can find just about anything on Ukraine Boost.
Okay.
And every purchase directly benefits Ukrainian citizens and businesses.
That's amazing. So it's like a win-win situation.
It is.
You get to support a good cause and get something cool in return.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just the economic benefits.
Okay.
Every purchase is a small act of defiance against authoritarianism,
Right.
a tangible way to show solidarity with those fighting for their right to exist.
Mm-hmm.
It's a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming challenges, we can choose to act to make a difference.
It's empowering to think that we can actually contribute to a more just and peaceful world through our everyday choices.
Mm-hmm.
So how can our listeners get involved with Ukraine Boost?
The easiest way to get involved is to visit the Ukraine Boost website.
Okay,
You can browse the marketplace, learn about the different businesses and products available,
Right.
and make a purchase that aligns with your interests and values.
Mm-hmm.
You can also spread the word about Ukraine Boost on social media,
Sure.
encouraging others to join the movement and support Ukraine in a tangible way.
So we've talked about the geopolitical implications of the war, the importance of international unity,
Right.
the risks and opportunities associated with a ceasefire, and the potential for inspiring pro-democracy movements.
Yes.
We've also discussed how individuals can make a difference through initiatives like Ukraine Boost,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like there's still a piece missing from our conversation,
Yeah.
something we haven't fully explored yet. We've been discussing this before in terms of like, these global power dynamics and potential ripple effects.
Right.
But it's really easy to forget that at the heart of this conflict
Yeah.
are real people whose lives have been completely upended by this.
You're absolutely right. It's crucial to remember the human costs of this war.
Yeah.
We're talking about millions of Ukrainians displaced from their homes,
Right.
families torn apart,
Yeah.
and, the enduring trauma of living through a conflict of this magnitude.
Right.
These are not just statistics.
Right.
They represent individual lives shattered by war.
It's heartbreaking to think about the scale of the suffering here.
It is.
And it reminds us that this isn't some abstract geopolitical game.
Right.
This is about real human lives,
Yeah.
real human pain.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that's why, alongside the political and economic solutions we've discussed,
Mm-hmm.
we need to prioritize compassion and empathy.
Right.
Rebuilding Ukraine won't just be about infrastructure.
Sure.
It'll be about healing, about restoring hope and a sense of normalcy to a population that has endured unimaginable hardship.
So what can we do as individuals to help address this human side of the conflict? It feels inadequate to simply say, send thoughts and prayers.
There are many organizations doing incredible work on the ground in Ukraine and neighboring countries,
Mm-hmm.
providing humanitarian aid, psychological support,
Right.
helping refugees rebuild their lives.
Yeah.
Supporting these organizations, whether it's through donations or by volunteering our time and skills,
Mm-hmm.
can make a real difference.
I think it's also important to engage with the stories of those directly impacted by the war, hearing the voices of Ukrainians,
Mm-hmm.
sharing their experiences, their hopes, their fears. It humanizes the conflict in a way that statistics and news reports simply can't.
Absolutely. Storytelling has immense power.
Mm.
It can bridge divides, foster empathy,
Right.
and remind us that behind the headlines, there are real people whose lives have been irrevocably changed.
Yeah.
These stories deserve to be heard, shared, and remembered.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left with a mix of emotions, concern for the future, hope for a peaceful resolution,
Right.
and a sense of responsibility to do what we can to help.
Yeah.
It's clear that the war in Ukraine is a turning point, not just for Europe, but for the world.
It is. And while the path ahead remains uncertain,
Right.
one thing is clear. The choices we make now will have lasting consequences.
Yeah.
We can choose apathy or action.
Mm-hmm.
We can choose division or unity.
Right.
Ultimately, the future is ours to shape.
Powerful words. Well, thanks for guiding us through this complex and challenging topic.
You're welcome.
And to our listeners, we'll leave you with this thought. Don't let the news cycle dictate your engagement. Stay informed, stay compassionate,
Right.
and never underestimate your power to make a difference in the world. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.